The snow fell harder than anyone had seen in decades. Officer Maria Santos pulled her patrol car slowly through the empty streets of Millbrook, a small town nestled in the mountains of Colorado. The radio crackled with static as dispatch tried to reach units scattered across the county. The blizzard had started 3 days ago and showed no signs of stopping. Maria's partner, Officer Jake Reynolds, sat in the passenger seat with their canine companion Rex, a German shepherd with keen instincts and years of search and rescue training. They had been called to check on a reported disturbance near the old Riverside trailer park, but the storm had made the roads nearly impossible to navigate. Dispatch, "This is Unit 12, Maria spoke into her radio. "We're approaching Riverside now, but visibility is less than 10 feet. Requesting backup if available." The response was filled with static. "Unit 12, all other units are tied up with emergency calls. Continue with caution and report back." Jake squinted through the windshield as they turned into the trailer park. Most of the mobile homes looked abandoned, with snow piled high against their doors and windows. The wind howled through the bare trees, creating an eerie sound that made Rex's ears perk up in the back seat. "There." Jake pointed to a faint light flickering in one of the trailers at the far end of the park. "Someone's still here." As they drove closer, Rex began to whine and scratch at the window. The dog's behavior was unusual, and both officers knew to trust his instincts. Maria parked the patrol car about 50 feet from the trailer, and they all stepped out into the biting cold. The snow came up to their knees, and each step was a struggle. Rex bounded ahead, his nose to the ground, following a scent only he could detect. Suddenly he stopped and began barking frantically at a large snowdrift beside an overturned trash can. "What is it, boy?" Jake called out, fighting against the wind to reach the dog. Rex began digging frantically at the snow, his paws working desperately to clear away the white powder. Maria joined them, and together they began to dig where Rex was indicating. After several minutes of clearing snow, Jake's glove touched something soft. "Maria, there's something here," he called out, his voice barely audible over the storm. They dug faster now, their hands growing numb despite their gloves. Slowly, a patch of dark fabric became visible, then a shoulder, then a face. A young woman, probably in her early 20s, lay curled in the snow. Her lips were blue and her skin was pale as the snow around her. "She's alive," Maria gasped, checking for a pulse. Barely, but Rex wasn't finished. He continued digging nearby, and soon they discovered why. 2 tiny forms were nestled against the woman's body, wrapped in what appeared to be a torn blanket. Twin babies, no more than a few months old, their small bodies shivering violently in the freezing air. Jake immediately radioed for an ambulance while Maria carefully lifted the first baby. The infant was breathing but barely responsive. The second baby was in slightly better condition, crying weakly as Maria picked him up. "The mother's hypothermic," Jake reported over the radio. "We need immediate medical assistance. 2 infants as well, severe exposure to cold." The woman's eyes fluttered open for a moment, and she looked at Maria with desperate, pleading eyes. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Maria could see she was trying to say something about her babies. "It's okay," Maria whispered, holding one of the twins close to her body for warmth. "We've got them. We've got all of you." Jake had the other baby tucked inside his jacket, trying to share his body heat. The wind was getting stronger, and they knew they had to get the family to shelter immediately. The ambulance would never make it through the storm in time. "We need to get them to the car," Jake shouted over the wind. "The heater's running." Carefully, they carried the unconscious mother and her 2 babies through the deep snow to their patrol car. Maria sat in the back with the mother's head in her lap, while Jake held both babies in the front seat, the car's heater running at full blast. Rex sat alert in the cargo area, still agitated by what they had found. The dog had saved 3 lives that night with his keen senses and determination to investigate the snowdrift. As they waited for emergency medical help to arrive, Maria noticed something clutched in the woman's frozen hand. It was a small piece of paper folded and wet from the snow. She carefully extracted it and tried to read the water-damaged writing. The paper appeared to be some kind of note, but most of the words were illegible. She could make out what looked like an address in a nearby town, and what might have been a name. The mystery of how this young mother and her twin babies ended up buried in the snow was just beginning. "Stay with us," Maria whispered to the unconscious woman. "Help is coming." One of the babies began to cry more strongly, which both officers took as a good sign. The other remained quiet but was breathing more regularly in the warmth of the car. Jake kept checking their tiny pulses, relieved to feel their hearts beating steadily. The radio crackled again. Unit 12, emergency medical team is attempting to reach your location. What's your current status? 3 victims of severe cold exposure, Maria responded. Young female adult, unconscious but breathing. 2 infants, responsive but weak. We need immediate transport to County General. Copy that, Unit 12. Medical team is coming in on snow vehicles. At 15 minutes. As they waited, Maria studied the woman's face. She was younger than Maria had first thought, probably barely out of her teens. Her dark hair was matted with snow and ice, and her clothes were thin and inadequate for the brutal weather. How had she ended up here with 2 babies in the worst blizzard the area had seen in years? The twins appeared to be identical boys, with dark hair like their mother and tiny features that were beginning to regain some color in the warmth of the patrol car. Whatever had brought this family to this desperate situation, Maria was determined to find out the truth. Rex continued to pace restlessly in the back of the vehicle, occasionally whining and looking toward the trailer park. His behavior suggested there might be more to discover about this situation than just a family caught in a storm. The approaching sound of snow vehicles in the distance brought relief to both officers. Help was finally coming for the mother and her twin babies who had been found quivering in the snow, saved by the dedication of 2 police officers and their faithful canine partner. The emergency medical team arrived like angels in the storm, their specialized snow vehicles cutting through the deep drifts with practiced ease. Dr. Sarah Chen, the lead paramedic, worked quickly to assess the condition of the young mother and her twin babies. Her experienced hands moved with precision as she checked vital signs and prepared the family for transport. Core temperature is dangerously low, Dr. Chen announced to her team. We need to warm them gradually. The babies are in better shape than their mother, but all 3 need immediate hospital care. The woman, who still had not regained consciousness, was carefully placed on a specialized stretcher designed for cold weather rescues. The twins were wrapped in thermal blankets and placed in portable incubators that would maintain their body temperature during the journey to County General Hospital. Officer Santos rode with the medical team, still clutching the mysterious note she had found in the woman's hand. During the bumpy ride through the snow-covered roads, she studied it more carefully under the ambulance's interior lights. Most of the writing had been damaged by moisture, but she could make out fragments. Safe place. And what looked like, find Sarah. At the hospital, the family was rushed into the emergency department where a team of doctors and nurses waited. Dr. Michael Rodriguez, the emergency room physician, had dealt with hypothermia cases before, but rarely involving such young children. Get them into warming rooms immediately, he ordered. I want constant monitoring of their core temperatures. The mother goes to room 3, the babies to pediatric ICU. As the medical team worked to save the family, Maria and Jake found themselves in the hospital waiting room, filling out reports and trying to piece together what had happened. Rex had been left in the patrol car with the heater running, but both officers knew the dog deserved recognition for his life-saving discovery. Hospital social worker Linda Martinez approached the officers with a clipboard full of questions. As the designated liaison for cases involving children in distress, she needed to gather as much information as possible about the circumstances surrounding the rescue. Do we have any identification for the mother? Linda asked. Any idea how long they were out there? Jake shook his head. No identification found. Based on the snow accumulation around them, they could have been there for hours, maybe longer. If Rex hadn't detected them, we never would have found them in time. The mysterious note was turned over to the hospital administration to see if anyone could help decipher the remaining legible portions. The address fragment was particularly puzzling, as it appeared to reference a location nearly 200 miles away. Dr. Chen emerged from the treatment area with an update. The mother is stable but still unconscious. Her body temperature is slowly returning to normal, but she suffered significant exposure. The babies are responding well to treatment. They're remarkably resilient. Any idea about their ages? Maria asked. The twins appear to be about 4 months old, healthy despite their ordeal. The mother is approximately 19 or 20 years old. No obvious signs of injury other than the cold exposure, but we're running comprehensive tests. As the night wore on, more pieces of the puzzle began to emerge. A nurse noticed that the baby's clothing, though thin, was clean and appeared relatively new. The mother's jacket, while inadequate for the weather, showed signs of recent purchase. Someone had been caring for these children, at least until recently. Detective Ray Morrison arrived at the hospital around midnight. As the lead investigator for cases involving children, he needed to determine whether this was simply a tragic accident or something more sinister. His years of experience had taught him to look beyond the obvious. "Has she said anything yet?" Detective Morrison asked Dr. Rodriguez. "She's been drifting in and out of consciousness, but no coherent words yet. She did respond when we mentioned the babies, though. Clear maternal instinct even in her condition." Morrison studied the case notes and the mysterious paper fragment. The partial address bothered him. If the family had traveled from such a distance, how had they ended up in the trailer park during a blizzard with inadequate clothing and supplies? In the pediatric ICU, the twin boys were showing remarkable improvement. Nurse Patricia Williams, who had 30 years of experience with premature and at-risk infants, was amazed by their resilience. Despite their ordeal, both babies were feeding well and their vital signs were stabilizing. "They're fighters," she told Dr. Chen. "Someone took good care of these little ones before last night. They're well nourished and show no signs of neglect." The observation added another layer to the mystery. If the babies were well cared for, what had driven their young mother out into the deadly storm? Was she running from something or someone? Or had she simply become lost and disoriented in the blizzard? Hospital Security Chief Tom Bradley reviewed the surveillance footage from the emergency department entrance, hoping to spot any suspicious activity or individuals who might have followed the family to the hospital. The storm had kept most people indoors, but he wanted to ensure the family's safety while they recovered. Meanwhile, back at the trailer park, Officer Reynolds and Rex conducted a more thorough search of the area where the family had been found. The snow was still falling, but the wind had died down enough to allow for careful investigation of the scene. Rex led them to several interesting discoveries buried in the snow. A small diaper bag, nearly empty but containing a few baby bottles and what appeared to be formula packets. A woman's purse with no identification but containing $23 in cash and a bus ticket stub dated 3 days earlier. The bus ticket provided the first solid clue about the family's recent movements. The departure point was listed as Pine Ridge, a small town about 60 miles north of Millbrook. The arrival timestamp showed they had reached Millbrook just as the blizzard was beginning to intensify. "She came here on purpose," Jake realized as he studied the ticket. This wasn't random. She was coming to Millbrook specifically. But why would a young mother with twin babies travel to a small mountain town during a major storm? And why had she ended up at the abandoned trailer park instead of seeking proper shelter? Officer Reynolds called the Pine Ridge Police Department to report the discovery and request any information about missing persons or recent incidents involving a young woman with twin babies. The response was immediate and concerning. "We've been looking for her for 2 days," Sergeant Kelly O'Brien from Pine Ridge PD told him. Sarah Chen, 19 years old. Her boyfriend reported her missing along with their twin sons Marcus and Matthew. But there's more to this story than a simple missing person case. The revelation that they now had names for the family was encouraging, but Sergeant O'Brien's tone suggested complications ahead. The young woman's boyfriend had reported them missing, but according to O'Brien, there were concerning details about their relationship that had prompted an investigation. "We need to talk to your Detective Morrison," O'Brien continued. "There's a restraining order involved, and Sarah Chen may have been running for her life when she ended up in that snowstorm." Detective Morrison felt his stomach tighten as he listened to Sergeant O'Brien's revelations over the phone. The case was becoming more complex by the hour, and the young woman fighting for her life in the hospital bed might have been running from domestic violence when she ended up buried in the snow with her babies. "Tell me about the restraining order," Morrison said, settling into a chair in the hospital's family conference room. "Sarah Chen filed it 6 weeks ago against Marcus Thompson, the father of the twins," O'Brien explained. "Multiple domestic violence incidents, escalating threats, and he had started threatening the babies." Sarah was terrified. The pieces were starting to form a disturbing picture. Sarah hadn't been lost in the storm by accident. She had been fleeing for her life and the lives of her children. But something had gone wrong, and instead of reaching safety, she had ended up nearly freezing to death in an abandoned trailer park. Morrison requested that all files related to Sarah Chen and Marcus Thompson be sent immediately to the Millbrook Police Department. He also asked for Thompson's current location and whether he had been questioned about Sarah's disappearance. That's the problem, O'Brien admitted. Thompson hasn't been seen since the day Sarah disappeared. His apartment is empty and his car is missing. We think he might have followed her. The implication sent a chill through Morrison that had nothing to do with the weather. If Thompson had tracked Sarah to Millbrook, she and her babies might still be in danger even in the hospital. He immediately contacted hospital security to implement additional protective measures. Dr. Rodriguez appeared in the doorway of the conference room with encouraging news. Sarah is awake and asking for her babies. She's coherent but very weak. Do you need to speak with her? In a few minutes, Morrison replied. First, I need to make sure she and the babies are safe. Hospital Security Chief Bradley quickly arranged for discreet security coverage of both Sarah's room and the pediatric ICU where the twins were recovering. No visitors would be allowed without proper identification and approval from both Morrison and the medical staff. When Morrison finally entered Sarah's room, he found a young woman who looked even younger than her 19 years. Her dark eyes were filled with fear and exhaustion, but they lit up with desperate hope when she saw his badge. My babies, Sarah whispered, her voice hoarse from the cold exposure. Marcus and Matthew, are they okay? They're fine, Morrison assured her, pulling up a chair beside her bed. They're in the pediatric unit and they're getting excellent care. You saved their lives by keeping them close to your body in the snow. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she closed her eyes in relief. I thought we were going to die out there. I couldn't find the address. Everything looked the same in the snow. What address, Sarah? Where were you trying to go? Sarah reached under her pillow and pulled out a small piece of paper, similar to the one found in her frozen hand but in better condition. It contained the complete address of a women's shelter in Millbrook, along with a phone number and a contact name, Linda Martinez. Morrison realized that Linda Martinez was the same social worker who had been asking questions about Sarah's case earlier. The connection was not a coincidence. Sarah had been referred to the shelter, but the storm had prevented her from reaching safety. How did you get this address? Morrison asked gently. A counselor at the crisis center in Pine Ridge, Sarah explained. When Marcus started threatening the babies, she said there was a safe place in Millbrook where he couldn't find us. But when I got off the bus, I couldn't read the street signs because of the snow. I got lost. The tragic irony was overwhelming. Sarah had been within miles of safety when the blizzard disoriented her. Instead of finding the shelter, she had wandered into the trailer park and become trapped in the storm with her babies. Sarah, we need to talk about Marcus, Morrison said carefully. When did you last see him? Fear flickered across Sarah's face. 3 days ago. He found out about the restraining order and went crazy. He said he would never let me take his sons away from him. He said he would find us no matter where we went. Has he contacted you since you left Pine Ridge? Sarah shook her head. I turned off my phone so he couldn't track me. But he's smart, detective. He knows how to find people. Is he here? Did he follow us? Morrison chose his words carefully. We don't know where Marcus is right now, but we're taking precautions to keep you and the babies safe. The Pine Ridge police are looking for him. Down the hall in the pediatric ICU, the twins were continuing to recover remarkably well. Nurse Williams had become quite attached to the little boys who she had started calling by their names, now that their identity was known. Marcus and Matthew were alert and responsive, showing no lasting effects from their exposure to the cold. Dr. Chen was amazed by the babies' resilience. Their mother's quick thinking saved their lives, she told Dr. Rodriguez. Keeping them close to her body heat and wrapping them together made the difference between life and death. The medical team was preparing to move both babies to a regular pediatric room, a sign that they were out of immediate danger. However, the circumstances of their case meant they would remain under protective custody until the legal situation with their father could be resolved. Social worker Linda Martinez arrived at the hospital with a heavy heart. She had been working with the women's shelter to prepare for Sarah's arrival, but the young mother had never shown up. The staff had been worried when Sarah failed to call or arrive as planned. I gave her my direct number, Linda explained to Morrison. She was supposed to call when she got to town, but we never heard from her. When the storm got worse, we assumed she had delayed her trip. The shelter had been Sarah's lifeline, her planned escape from an increasingly dangerous relationship. Linda had worked for weeks to arrange the safe passage and had coordinated with Pine Ridge authorities to ensure Sarah's protection during the transition. What kind of threats was Marcus making? Morrison asked Linda. According to the crisis counselor in Pine Ridge, he had threatened to kill Sarah and take the babies. He said she would never see them again if she tried to leave him. The escalation was rapid and severe. The pattern was unfortunately familiar to Morrison. Domestic violence cases involving children often escalated quickly, with the abuser using the children as leverage to maintain control. Marcus Thompson fit the profile of a dangerous individual who would stop at nothing to regain control over his family. Officer Santos returned to the hospital with updates from the ongoing investigation at the trailer park. The search had revealed additional evidence that painted a clearer picture of Sarah's desperate journey through the storm. "We found footprints leading from the bus stop to the trailer park," Santos reported. "She walked nearly 2 miles in the blizzard carrying both babies. There are also signs that she tried to take shelter in several abandoned trailers before settling where we found them. The evidence showed that Sarah had fought desperately to keep her babies alive during the worst night of the storm. She had tried multiple locations for shelter before exhaustion and hypothermia overcame her. Her last conscious act had been to wrap her babies close to her body and shield them from the wind." As the investigation continued, one question remained unanswered. Where was Marcus Thompson? And was he still a threat to Sarah and her babies? Detective Morrison felt his stomach tighten as he listened to Sergeant O'Brien's revelations over the phone. The case was becoming more complex by the hour, and the young woman fighting for her life in the hospital bed might have been running from domestic violence when she ended up buried in the snow with her babies. "Tell me about the restraining order," Morrison said, settling into a chair in the hospital's family conference room. "Sarah Chen filed it 6 weeks ago against Marcus Thompson, the father of the twins," O'Brien explained. "Multiple domestic violence incidents, escalating threats, and he had started threatening the babies." Sarah was terrified. The pieces were starting to form a disturbing picture. Sarah hadn't been lost in the storm by accident. She had been fleeing for her life and the lives of her children. But something had gone wrong, and instead of reaching safety, she had ended up nearly freezing to death in an abandoned trailer park. Morrison requested that all files related to Sarah Chen and Marcus Thompson be sent immediately to the Millbrook Police Department. He also asked for Thompson's current location and whether he had been questioned about Sarah's disappearance. "That's the problem," O'Brien admitted. "Thompson hasn't been seen since the day Sarah disappeared. His apartment is empty and his car is missing. We think he might have followed her." The implication sent a chill through Morrison that had nothing to do with the weather. If Thompson had tracked Sarah to Millbrook, she and her babies might still be in danger even in the hospital. He immediately contacted hospital security to implement additional protective measures. Dr. Rodriguez appeared in the doorway of the conference room with encouraging news. "Sarah is awake and asking for her babies. She's coherent but very weak. Do you need to speak with her?" "In a few minutes," Morrison replied. "First, I need to make sure she and the babies are safe." Hospital Security Chief Bradley quickly arranged for discreet security coverage of both Sarah's room and the pediatric ICU where the twins were recovering. No visitors would be allowed without proper identification and approval from both Morrison and the medical staff. When Morrison finally entered Sarah's room, he found a young woman who looked even younger than her 19 years. Her dark eyes were filled with fear and exhaustion, but they lit up with desperate hope when she saw his badge. "My babies," Sarah whispered, her voice hoarse from the cold exposure. "Marcus and Matthew. Are they okay?" "They're fine," Morrison assured her, pulling up a chair beside her bed. "They're in the pediatric unit and they're getting excellent care. You saved their lives by keeping them close to your body in the snow." Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she closed her eyes in relief. "I thought we were going to die out there. I couldn't find the address. Everything looked the same in the snow." "What address, Sarah? Where were you trying to go?" Sarah reached under her pillow and pulled out a small piece of paper, similar to the one found in her frozen hand but in better condition. It contained the complete address of a women's shelter in Millbrook, along with a phone number and a contact name, Linda Martinez. Morrison realized that Linda Martinez was the same social worker who had been asking questions about Sarah's case earlier. The connection was not a coincidence. Sarah had been referred to the shelter, but the storm had prevented her from reaching safety. "How did you get this address?" Morrison asked gently. "A counselor at the crisis center in Pine Ridge," Sarah explained. "When Marcus started threatening the babies, she said there was a safe place in Millbrook where he couldn't find us. But when I got off the bus, I couldn't read the street signs because of the snow. I got lost." The tragic irony was overwhelming. Sarah had been within miles of safety when the blizzard disoriented her. Instead of finding the shelter, she had wandered into the trailer park and become trapped in the storm with her babies. "Sarah, we need to talk about Marcus," Morrison said carefully. "When did you last see him?" Fear flickered across Sarah's face. 3 days ago. He found out about the restraining order and went crazy. He said he would never let me take his sons away from him. He said he would find us no matter where we went." "Has he contacted you since you left Pine Ridge?" Sarah shook her head. "I turned off my phone so he couldn't track me. But he's smart, detective. He knows how to find people." "Is he here? Did he follow us?" Morrison chose his words carefully. "We don't know where Marcus is right now, but we're taking precautions to keep you and the babies safe. The Pine Ridge police are looking for him." Down the hall in the pediatric ICU, the twins were continuing to recover remarkably well. Nurse Williams had become quite attached to the little boys, who she had started calling by their names now that their identity was known. Marcus and Matthew were alert and responsive, showing no lasting effects from their exposure to the cold. Dr. Chen was amazed by the babies' resilience. Their mother's quick thinking saved their lives, she told Dr. Rodriguez. Keeping them close to her body heat and wrapping them together made the difference between life and death. The medical team was preparing to move both babies to a regular pediatric room, a sign that they were out of immediate danger. However, the circumstances of their case meant they would remain under protective custody until the legal situation with their father could be resolved. Social worker Linda Martinez arrived at the hospital with a heavy heart. She had been working with the women's shelter to prepare for Sarah's arrival, but the young mother had never shown up. The staff had been worried when Sarah failed to call or arrive as planned. "I gave her my direct number," Linda explained to Morrison. "She was supposed to call when she got to town, but we never heard from her. When the storm got worse, we assumed she had delayed her trip. The shelter had been Sarah's lifeline, her planned escape from an increasingly dangerous relationship. Linda had worked for weeks to arrange the safe passage and had coordinated with Pine Ridge authorities to ensure Sarah's protection during the transition." "What kind of threats was Marcus making?" Morrison asked Linda. According to the crisis counselor in Pine Ridge, he had threatened to kill Sarah and take the babies. He said she would never see them again if she tried to leave him. The escalation was rapid and severe. The pattern was unfortunately familiar to Morrison. Domestic violence cases involving children often escalated quickly, with the abuser using the children as leverage to maintain control. Marcus Thompson fit the profile of a dangerous individual who would stop at nothing. To regain control over his family, Officer Santos returned to the hospital with updates from the ongoing investigation at the trailer park. The search had revealed additional evidence that painted a clearer picture of Sarah's desperate journey through the storm. "We found footprints leading from the bus stop to the trailer park," Santos reported. "She walked nearly 2 miles in the blizzard, carrying both babies. There are also signs that she tried to take shelter in several abandoned trailers before settling where we found them. The evidence showed that Sarah had fought desperately to keep her babies alive during the worst night of the storm. She had tried multiple locations for shelter before exhaustion and hypothermia overcame her. Her last conscious act had been to wrap her babies close to her body and shield them from the wind." As the investigation continued, one question remained unanswered. Where was Marcus Thompson? And was he still a threat to Sarah and her babies? 2 weeks after Marcus's arrest, Sarah was finally strong enough to be discharged from the hospital, but her relief was tempered by the ongoing legal battle for custody of her sons. Marcus had hired an expensive attorney who was challenging every aspect of the restraining order and demanding immediate visitation rights with the twins. Family court judge Patricia Williams reviewed the case files with growing concern. The evidence of domestic violence was clear, but Marcus's legal team was arguing that Sarah's flight to Millbrook demonstrated mental instability and that the children would be better served in their father's custody. "Your Honor," Marcus's attorney David Sterling argued during the emergency custody hearing, My client has been wrongfully separated from his children, based on unsubstantiated allegations. Ms. Chen's decision to flee with the babies during a dangerous storm shows questionable judgment and puts the children at risk. Sarah's court-appointed attorney, Rebecca Martinez, countered with the documented evidence of threats and violence. Your Honor, my client was seeking safety at a recognized women's shelter. Her actions were those of a protective mother, fleeing an increasingly dangerous situation. Judge Williams studied the medical reports from the twins' hospitalization. Both babies had recovered completely from their cold exposure, with no lasting effects. However, the circumstances that led to their near-death experience painted a disturbing picture of the desperation Sarah had felt. The evidence shows a pattern of escalating threats and controlling behavior, Judge Williams noted. However, the children's welfare must be the primary consideration in this decision. Marcus sat in the courtroom wearing a suit his attorney had provided, looking nothing like the wild man who had confronted hospital security 2 weeks earlier. His transformation was calculated, designed to present him as a concerned father rather than a dangerous stalker. Detective Morrison testified about the events leading to Sarah's rescue and Marcus's subsequent arrest. His professional demeanor and detailed account of the investigation carried significant weight with the judge. In my 15 years of investigating domestic violence cases, Morrison told the court, I have rarely seen such a clear pattern of stalking and intimidation. The defendant tracked the victims across county lines during a life-threatening storm, showing a level of obsession that presents ongoing danger. The hearing was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Elizabeth Foster, a child psychologist who had been evaluating the twins during their extended stay at the hospital. Her assessment would be crucial in determining the best interests of the children. Marcus and Matthew Chen Thompson show no signs of trauma or developmental delays, Dr. Foster reported. However, they have formed a strong attachment to their mother, which is typical and healthy for children their age. Separating them from their primary caregiver at this stage could be psychologically harmful. Marcus's attorney objected to the psychologist's recommendation, arguing that the children needed a stable home environment that Sarah could not provide. My client has a steady job, a permanent residence, and family support. Ms. Chen is essentially homeless and dependent on charity. The harsh characterization of Sarah's situation stung, but Rebecca Martinez was ready with a response. My client is a survivor of domestic violence who has taken extraordinary steps to protect her children. The women's shelter in Millbrook has offered her long-term support and housing assistance. Judge Williams called for a brief recess to review the extensive documentation in the case. During the break, Sarah sat in the hallway with Linda Martinez, the social worker who had become her strongest advocate throughout the legal proceedings. I'm scared they're going to give him custody, Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. His lawyer makes it sound like I'm a bad mother for trying to protect my babies. Linda had seen many cases like Sarah's, where abusers use the legal system to continue their control and intimidation. Judge Williams has a strong track record of protecting children in domestic violence cases. She understands the dynamics involved. When court resumed, Judge Williams delivered her decision with careful consideration of all factors presented. While Mr. Thompson has the right to seek custody of his children, the evidence of threats, stalking, and violation of court orders demonstrates a pattern of behavior that poses risk to both the children and their mother. The judge's ruling granted Sarah temporary sole custody of the twins, with Marcus being allowed supervised visitation only after completing a court-mandated anger management program and psychological evaluation. Additionally, the restraining order was extended and strengthened with specific provisions protecting the children. Marcus's reaction to the ruling was swift and violent. He stood up in the courtroom and began shouting threats at Sarah, his carefully constructed facade crumbling instantly. This is not over. You can't keep my sons from me. I know where you live now. Court security officers quickly restrained Marcus as his attorney tried unsuccessfully to calm him down. The outburst in front of the judge had undermined any remaining credibility his legal team might have maintained. Mr. Thompson, Judge Williams said sternly, your behavior in this courtroom today validates the concerns about your fitness as a parent. You are in contempt of court, and I am ordering additional restrictions on any future contact with the children. As Marcus was led away in handcuffs for the second time in 2 weeks, Sarah felt a mixture of relief and terror. She had won this battle, but she knew the war was far from over. Marcus's threats echoed in her mind as she realized that legal protection was only as effective as the system's ability to enforce it. The women's shelter in Millbrook had prepared a safe room for Sarah and her twins, but the security measures felt inadequate, given Marcus's demonstrated determination. Director Carol Thompson, no relation to Marcus despite sharing his surname, had dealt with dangerous situations before but recognized this case as particularly high risk. "We're implementing additional security protocols," Carol explained to Sarah as they toured the facility. "Electronic monitoring, enhanced locks, and we're coordinating with local police for regular patrols." Sarah appreciated the efforts, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Marcus would find a way to circumvent any security measures. His final threat in the courtroom had been specific and personal, suggesting he had already been gathering information about her new location. Detective Morrison received troubling news from Sergeant O'Brien in Pine Ridge. Marcus had been released on bail despite the contempt charge, and his family had posted the money. More concerning, Marcus's employer reported that he had quit his job and withdrawn his entire savings account. "He's planning something," Morrison told Officer Santos as they reviewed the case updates. "Men like Marcus don't just walk away when they lose custody. They escalate." The detective's concerns proved prophetic. 3 days after his release, Marcus attempted to approach the shelter disguised as a delivery driver. Only the vigilance of the security guard prevented him from gaining access to the building, but the incident confirmed everyone's worst fears about his intentions. Sarah was moved to a secondary safe house location, known only to a few key personnel. The twins, now 5 months old, seemed unaware of the danger surrounding them, but Sarah lived in constant fear. Every unexpected sound made her jump, and she barely slept despite her exhaustion. Dr. Foster continued her psychological evaluation of the family, noting the impact of ongoing stress on Sarah's mental health. "The constant threat of danger is taking a toll," she reported to the court. "Sarah is showing signs of severe anxiety and hypervigilance, which is affecting her ability to care for herself and the children." The psychological assessment became another weapon in Marcus's legal arsenal. His new attorney, even more aggressive than the first, filed motions claiming that Sarah's mental state made her unfit for custody. The legal maneuvering was designed to wear down Sarah's resolve and exhaust her limited resources. Rebecca Martinez worked tirelessly to counter these attacks, but the emotional toll on Sarah was evident. The young mother who had survived hypothermia and fought to save her babies was being slowly broken down by the relentless legal and psychological warfare. "I can't keep living like this," Sarah confided to Linda Martinez during one of their weekly sessions. "Maybe it would be better if I just gave him what he wants. At least then this would stop." Linda recognized the signs of a trauma victim being worn down by her abuser's tactics. "Sarah, that's exactly what he wants you to think. Giving up now means he wins and your children lose their mother's protection." The breakthrough in the case came from an unexpected source. Marcus's own family, who had initially supported him by posting bail money, became concerned about his increasingly erratic behavior. His sister, Jennifer Thompson, contacted Detective Morrison with disturbing information. "Marcus has been staying at our family cabin, and he's not acting right," Jennifer reported. "He's obsessed with getting his children back, but he talks about them like they're objects, and he's been researching things online that worry me." Jennifer's decision to turn in her own brother provided crucial intelligence about Marcus's plans. She had discovered printed maps of the shelter area, detailed schedules of staff movements, and, most alarmingly, research into untraceable methods of surveillance and intimidation. "He's not planning to follow court orders," Jennifer told Morrison. "He's planning to take those babies and disappear. He said something about teaching Sarah a lesson she'll never forget." The information prompted an immediate response from law enforcement. A joint task force was formed between Millbrook and Pine Ridge police departments, with the FBI consulted about potential kidnapping charges. The stakes had escalated beyond a simple custody dispute to a federal crime investigation. Sarah was informed about the new threats, and security around her and the twins was increased significantly. The safe house was equipped with panic buttons, and plainclothes officers were stationed nearby around the clock. The twins' medical appointments were conducted at secure locations with armed escorts. Despite these precautions, everyone involved in the case understood that Marcus held significant advantages. He was familiar with the area, had financial resources, and possessed the dangerous combination of intelligence and desperation that made him extremely unpredictable. As winter deepened around Millbrook, the same snow that had nearly killed Sarah and her babies now served as both protection and threat. The harsh weather made surveillance more difficult, but it also limited escape routes if Marcus made his move. The community that had rallied to save the family found in the storm was now holding its breath, waiting for the next phase of a drama that had far exceeded anyone's expectations. The attempt came on a Tuesday evening in February. Exactly 1 month after the court hearing, Marcus had spent weeks studying the security patterns around the safe house, using skills he had learned during his brief military service years earlier. His plan was methodical and showed the calculating patience of someone who had nothing left to lose. Officer Santos was conducting a routine patrol around the safe house perimeter when she noticed footprints in the fresh snow that didn't match the authorized personnel patterns. The prints led from a wooded area behind the property toward the building's rear entrance, where security cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned earlier that day. "This is Unit 15, Santos radioed immediately. "I have suspicious activity at the safe house, requesting immediate backup and lockdown protocols." Inside the safe house, Sarah was feeding the twins their evening bottles when the security alarm began blaring. The sound sent her into immediate panic, her mind flashing back to all of Marcus's threats about finding them. She clutched both babies closer as security personnel rushed to implement emergency procedures. Detective Morrison arrived within minutes, along with additional units from both Millbrook and Pine Ridge departments. The coordinated response reflected the seriousness with which law enforcement was treating the ongoing threat. Rex, the Canine officer who had originally found the family, was brought in to track the intruder's scent. The German Shepherd immediately picked up Marcus's trail, leading the team through the woods behind the safe house to a small clearing where tire tracks were visible in the snow. The tracks were fresh, suggesting Marcus had fled when he realized his approach had been detected. "He was here," Morrison confirmed grimly, "and he got a lot closer than we ever should have allowed." The security breach prompted an immediate relocation of Sarah and the twins to a new, more secure facility 2 counties away. The transfer was conducted under heavy police escort, with multiple decoy vehicles to confuse any potential surveillance. Sarah sat in the back of an unmarked police car, holding her babies and wondering if she would ever feel safe again. FBI agent Claire Mitchell joined the investigation as Marcus's actions now clearly constituted interstate stalking and attempted kidnapping. Her experience with similar cases brought a new level of expertise to the hunt for Marcus, who had effectively disappeared after his failed attempt at the safe house. "He's not going to stop," Agent Mitchell explained to the assembled law enforcement team. "Men like Marcus Thompson view their children as possessions, and they see the mother's resistance as theft. He'll keep escalating until he either succeeds or is stopped permanently." The federal involvement allowed for expanded surveillance capabilities and interstate coordination. Marcus's financial records, communication devices, and known associates were all placed under scrutiny. The investigation revealed a disturbing pattern of preparation that suggested his latest attempt was just a rehearsal for a larger plan. Bank records showed Marcus had been withdrawing cash in small amounts over several weeks, building up resources that couldn't be easily traced. His internet search history, obtained through federal warrants, revealed research into child abduction cases, security system vulnerabilities, and false identity creation. Jennifer Thompson, Marcus's sister, provided additional crucial information about his state of mind. "He talks about the babies like they're his property that was stolen," she told Agent Mitchell. "He doesn't seem to understand that they're real children with their own needs. It's like he sees them as trophies to win back." The psychological profile developed by federal behavioral analysts painted a picture of a man who had completely lost touch with reality regarding his relationship with his children. Marcus had constructed an elaborate fantasy where he was the wronged party, fighting against a conspiracy to keep him from his rightful possessions. Sarah's mental health was deteriorating under the constant stress and repeated relocations. Dr. Foster recommended increased psychological support and considered prescribing anti-anxiety medication, but Sarah refused anything that might affect her ability to care for her babies. "I can't be cloudy or slow," Sarah explained to the psychologist. "If Marcus finds us, I need to be able to protect Marcus and Matthew." They're the only things that matter. The twins, now 6 months old, were showing remarkable resilience despite the chaos surrounding their young lives. They were meeting all developmental milestones and seemed to thrive on their mother's constant attention and care. However, Dr. Foster worried about the long-term effects of living in such a high-stress environment. The break in the case came from an unexpected source. Marcus's former employer in Pine Ridge contacted police after receiving a strange phone call. Marcus had called asking for information about company security protocols and employee schedules, claiming he was considering returning to work. Something about the call didn't feel right, the supervisor told Detective Morrison. Marcus sounded different, like he was fishing for information rather than genuinely interested in his job. The phone call was traced to a prepaid cell phone purchased with cash in a neighboring state. More importantly, the call had been made from a location that helped narrow down Marcus's general area of operation. Federal agents began coordinating with local law enforcement in the region to increase surveillance and patrol activities. Officer Reynolds, who had been part of the original rescue team, requested assignment to the protective detail around Sarah and her babies. The case had become personal for him, and he was determined to see it through to a safe conclusion. These babies would have died in that snow if Rex hadn't found them, Reynolds told his supervisor. I'm not going to let their father destroy what we saved. The emotional investment of the original rescue team reflected the broader community support that had rallied around Sarah's case. The women's shelter had received donations from across the region, and local businesses had volunteered services to support the ongoing protection efforts. Marcus's next attempt was more sophisticated and nearly succeeded. Using a stolen identity and forged credentials, he managed to gain employment with a company that provided maintenance services to several government buildings, including the courthouse where custody hearings were held. The plan was discovered only when a routine background check revealed discrepancies in his employment application. By the time authorities realized what had happened, Marcus had been working in the courthouse for 3 days. With access to confidential case files and scheduling information, he's been planning this for months. Agent Mitchell realized as the scope of Marcus's preparation became clear. This wasn't desperation. This was a calculated long-term strategy to regain control over his victims. The courthouse breach prompted immediate security upgrades and a complete review of all pending domestic violence cases. Other victims and their families were notified of the potential security compromise, and additional protective measures were implemented across the district. Sarah learned about the courthouse infiltration during a secure video conference with her legal team. The revelation that Marcus had been so close to accessing official information about her case and location sent her into a state of near collapse. He's never going to stop, she sobbed to Rebecca Martinez. He's smarter than all of us, and he has more time and money than we do. How are we supposed to fight someone who can become anyone and go anywhere? The question haunted everyone involved in the case, as they realized they were facing an adversary who combined intelligence, resources, and complete lack of moral constraints in his pursuit of what he considered rightfully his. The final confrontation came on a spring morning, nearly 6 months after Officers Santos and Reynolds had first pulled Sarah and her babies from the snow. Marcus had spent weeks studying the routine at the new secure facility, waiting for the perfect moment to execute his most ambitious plan yet. He had obtained detailed blueprints of the building through his network of contacts from his courthouse job, and had identified a weakness in the security system during shift changes. More troubling, he had recruited 2 accomplices, former military associates who shared his twisted view of parental rights and government overreach. Agent Mitchell received the intelligence about Marcus's accomplices from an FBI informant who had infiltrated a radical father's rights group. The group had been providing Marcus with resources and tactical support, viewing his case as a symbol of their broader struggle against what they saw as biased family courts. We're not dealing with one desperate man anymore, Mitchell briefed the protection team. This is now a coordinated effort involving trained individuals with military experience and sophisticated resources. The escalation prompted the decision to move Sarah and the twins to a federal safe house with maximum security protocols. The transfer was planned with military precision, involving multiple agencies and elaborate misdirection tactics to prevent Marcus from tracking their movements. Sarah had grown thin and gaunt from months of constant stress, but her determination to protect her children had never wavered. The twins, now 8 months old, were crawling and beginning to show distinct personalities. Marcus was the quieter of the two, often content to observe his surroundings, while Matthew was more active and demanding of attention. They looked like their father, Sarah admitted to Dr. Foster during one of their sessions. Sometimes that scares me. But then I remember they're innocent babies who deserve a chance at a normal life. The psychological evaluation had documented Sarah's remarkable resilience in the face of ongoing trauma. Despite everything she had endured, she remained a devoted and capable mother, providing stability and love for her children even in the most challenging circumstances. Detective Morrison had become personally invested in ensuring Sarah's safety, working closely with federal agents to anticipate Marcus's next move. The investigation had consumed months of his career, but he understood that failure would likely result in tragedy for the entire family. The breakthrough came when Marcus's sister Jennifer, who had been cooperating with authorities, reported that her brother had contacted her with a final ultimatum. He claimed he was prepared to end the standoff one way or another, and that Sarah had one last chance to voluntarily return his children. He said if she didn't bring the babies to him by a certain date, he would come for them himself, Jennifer told Agent Mitchell. And he said this time, Sarah wouldn't be around to interfere with his relationship with his sons. The threat was explicit and immediate. Marcus had set a deadline of 1 week, after which he promised to take decisive action. Intelligence suggested he was planning a coordinated assault on the federal safe house, using his military-trained accomplices and sophisticated equipment. Rather than waiting for Marcus to act, federal authorities decided to take the initiative. Using Jennifer as an intermediary, they arranged what appeared to be a meeting between Marcus and Sarah at a neutral location. In reality, it was an elaborate trap designed to capture Marcus and his associates without endangering Sarah or the babies. The staged meeting was set for a remote rest area along a mountain highway, chosen for its isolation and tactical advantages for law enforcement. Sarah would not actually be present, but Marcus's obsession with controlling the situation made him confident he could dictate terms once he had her in his power. On the appointed day, Marcus arrived at the location with his 2 accomplices, armed and prepared for what they expected to be a simple intimidation operation. They had no idea that federal agents and local SWAT teams had been positioned around the area for hours, waiting for their arrival. The arrest was swift and decisive. Marcus and his associates were surrounded before they realized the true nature of the situation. Despite their military training, they were overwhelmed by superior numbers and tactical positioning, surrendering without the violent confrontation everyone had feared. Marcus Thompson, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit kidnapping, stalking, violation of federal protection orders, and terrorist threats, Agent Mitchell announced as Marcus was placed in restraints. The final irony was that Marcus had been captured while carrying detailed plans for the assault on the safe house, along with weapons and equipment that would have made him extremely dangerous. His obsession with regaining control over his children had led him into a trap that ended his freedom permanently. Federal prosecutors charged Marcus and his accomplices with multiple felonies carrying significant prison sentences. The evidence was overwhelming, including recorded conversations, detailed planning documents, and weapons violations. Marcus's legal team had no choice but to negotiate a plea agreement to avoid potential life imprisonment. Sarah learned of Marcus's arrest while playing with her babies in the secure nursery of the federal facility. The news brought her to her knees with relief, but also triggered a delayed emotional reaction to months of accumulated trauma. Is it really over? She asked Agent Mitchell through her tears. Can we finally have a normal life? The answer was cautiously optimistic. Marcus would be imprisoned for at least 15 years, and the federal convictions would permanently bar him from any legal claim to custody or visitation with his children. Sarah was free to rebuild her life without the constant threat of his interference. 6 months later, Sarah and her twins had settled into a small apartment in a new city, far from the mountains where their ordeal had begun. The boys were walking now, exploring their world with the fearless curiosity of toddlers who had never known their father's violence. Officer Santos and Rex visited them on the first anniversary of the rescue, bringing gifts for the boys and checking on Sarah's progress. The reunion was emotional for everyone who had been part of the original rescue team. You saved our lives that night, Sarah told Santos. watching her sons play with Rex in the small living room, not just from the snow but from everything that came after. Detective Morrison attended Marcus's sentencing hearing, representing all the law enforcement officers who had worked to protect Sarah and her children. As Marcus was led away to begin his 15-year prison sentence, Morrison felt a sense of justice for the young woman who had nearly died protecting her babies from his control. The case had changed everyone involved, demonstrating both the persistence of domestic violence and the power of community support in overcoming it. Sarah's journey from a terrified teenager buried in the snow to a confident young mother rebuilding. Her life had inspired everyone who knew her story. Dr. Foster's final report documented the remarkable recovery of both Sarah and her children from their traumatic experiences. The twins showed no signs of developmental delays or emotional problems, while Sarah had successfully completed therapy and was beginning college courses in social work. Sometimes the strongest people are those who have survived the worst circumstances, Dr. Foster wrote in her conclusion. Sarah Chen has not only survived but has transformed her trauma into a determination to help others facing similar situations. On quiet evenings in their new home, Sarah would hold her sons and tell them the story of the brave police officers and their dog, who had found them in the snow. She promised them that they would grow up knowing they were loved and protected, free from the shadow of their father's violence. The twins, now too young to understand the full story, would listen with wide eyes and then return to their play, secure in their mother's love and the knowledge that they were safe. Their future stretched ahead bright with possibility, no longer darkened by the threats of a man who had confused possession with love and control with protection.